Rabbi Professor Dvora Weisberg is the Rabbi Aaron Pankin Professor of Rabbinics and the Director of the Rabbinical School of Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion. Dr. Weisberg is a leading scholar in feminism and Jewish law. She is Rabbi Baruchel's favorite teacher. And so she has come to be our scholar in residence this Shabbat, all the way from Los Angeles, to celebrate with Rabbi Baruchel and her family, to celebrate with the entire congregation on this occasion, this joyful occasion of her installation. Dr. Weisberg.
Shabbat Shalom. I want to begin by thanking Rabbi Splansky and the entire congregation for inviting me to share this special Shabbat with you. I'm delighted to be at Holy Blossom Temple for the installation of, I can't say favorite because I have so many students on, for my beloved student, Rabbi Taylor Baruchel. When I was a graduate student, I spent a lot of time trying to understand how the ancient rabbis' minds worked. I became so caught up in Talmudic logic that I found myself applying it to aspects of my life that the rabbis had never imagined. One day, I was in the grocery store looking for something to unclog the bathtub. One product had a label that said, "This product may damage pipes." Another product had no warning at all. "Ah," I said to a friend who was shopping with me, "since the first bottle has a warning, but the second does not, I can infer that the second product does not damage pipes." My friend sighed and said to me, "Dvora, you're spending too much time into the Talmud." After many years studying, teaching, and writing about the Talmud, I still find that it offers me inspiration, not only when shopping, but as I face challenging moments in life as an individual and as a teacher. And so, as I stand before you at the end of a month in which the Jewish people has experienced grief and horror that is almost unimaginable, I want to share with you a piece of Talmud that strikes me as really appropriate for this time. The Talmud in Menachot 29b tells a story in which Moses ascends to heaven to receive the Torah. And this story raises questions about justice. Moses goes up to heaven and finds God tying little crowns to the letters of the Torah. If any of you have seen the inside of a Torah, some of the letters are decorated. And Moses says, "Look, we need the Torah now, God. We don't need all the decor. Couldn't we just have it?" And God says, "No, this is important, because someday there's going to be a man named Akiba, and he is going to derive Jewish traditions from these little crowns that you think are just decorative." And Moses says, "This I've got to see. Show me." So God says, "Turn around," and Moses turns around and magically finds himself in the house of study of Rabbi Akiva. He sits in the back, and he does not understand a single thing. And he feels pretty bad. And then a student says to Rabbi Akiva, "How do we know this?" And Rabbi Akiva says, "This was the law from Moses at Sinai." And hearing his name, even though he still doesn't understand it, Moses feels much better. And he goes back to God and he says, "God, you've got this guy, this Akiba, he's amazing. Why are you giving the Torah through me? Give it through him." And God says, "Shtok, be silent. This is what I've decided to do." Moses says, "Okay, I see he's a great guy. Show me his reward." And God says, "Turn around." And Moses turns around and he sees that Akiba has been martyred and that his flesh is being sold in the marketplace. Moses says, "God, zo Torah v'zo schara, this is Torah, this is the reward." And God again says, "Shtok, be quiet. This is what I've decided." A major issue in this story is what our philosophy professors call theodicy, which is how do we understand a world with a God who's supposed to be just when we see things happening that don't seem just to us at all? And a number of my teachers have tried to explain this. One of them writes this: "The end of this story is chilling. Not only does Moses receive no explanation, but he, and with him, we, are left to wonder whether the same thing could easily happen to us. This story thus fails to provide a satisfactory answer, or really any answer, to the theological problem it raises." And for this scholar, the important lesson that he derives from this is that the story, and I quote him, presents an honest expression of rabbinic bafflement at the problem of theodicy. That is, instead of offering easy and most likely unsatisfactory solutions to the problem, the Talmud is trying to acknowledge to its readers that the Talmud itself, the rabbis who wrote the Talmud, struggle with theology. They don't have any easy answers either. And thus, the readers, us, are left to grapple with the problem, but at least left with the knowledge that our concerns are reasonable, that no one could read this passage and not be somewhat disturbed. So, this scholar, Jeff Rubenstein, says that the story portrays God as a capricious master who coldly watches the death of one slave with no care to explain why to any others. Not very good news. My teacher, Rachel Adler, who minds this story as she's writing a feminist theology of the Holocaust, writes this. She says, "At the end of this story, we glimpse a God who seems utterly beyond law, beyond justice, beyond compassion, who accepts responsibility for appalling injustice, but offers no explanation." When I read these scholars on this piece, as I was thinking about a feminist commentary on the Talmud, I had a problem. And my problem was that both Rubenstein and Adler are focused on a problem related to God, right? How can God allow injustice to happen? And so God becomes the central character of the story. Read this way, we have a very hierarchical story, a story where God is all-powerful and central, and Moses and Akiba are not very powerful and peripheral. And so I wondered what would happen if we kaleidoscoped the story. What would happen if we put the human beings in this story in the center? So I compared this story to another story about Akiba, seeking to challenge our natural acceptance of the hierarchy and to highlight the problems. I also wanted to shift the reader's focus from acceptance, albeit reluctant acceptance, of divine injustice to empathy, to a feeling that we would have for Moses and Akiba as human beings trapped in a world where the unspeakable occurs and in which appeals to God are met with a response that suggests God is complicit in, and perhaps even indifferent, to the suffering of the righteous. The degree to which Moses is dismissed by God as an unequal partner can be seen from another rabbinic story, also about Akiba's death. In Brachot 61b, we read of Akiba's death at the hands of the Romans. He is tortured for the crime of teaching Torah. In this story, the angels watching him suffer challenge God using the same words that we saw in our passage. Zo Torah v'zo schara. God, this is Torah, and this is its reward. And then they go a step further. They quote a line from Psalm 17, implying that God, in this case, is essentially a killer. But while Moses is told, shtok, be quiet, God doesn't feel that God can get away with that with the angels. Instead, God defends God's self to the angels, quoting the rest of the verse in Psalms. Chalkam chayim, their portion is life. That is, a righteous person may suffer terribly in this world, but they'll be rewarded in the world to come. The angels, it seems, cannot be ignored as easily as Moses. This story of Moses in the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Akiva offers no comfort whatsoever. I cannot imagine a reading that would make the words, "Be silent, this is what I have decided," a declaration of consolation. There's no nechemta, no comfort in God's response to Moses. And the only way that I can imagine being in relationship with the God of this story is to ask, what if even God cannot always find pleasure in the outcome of God's own decisions? What if, just as I sometimes ask myself, why did I do that? How could I not have foreseen the consequences? So too, perhaps the God of this story is a God who takes the risk of engaging with imperfect human beings, and thus must God's self sometimes accept the pain of decisions, particularly the decision to allow us free will, that will lead to horrors. Like Moses, we're sometimes presented with a glimpse of final moments and forced to weep at the realization of our own frailty, our own mortality. And like Moses, we're called upon to translate the vision of God, the vision of Torah, into reality. We struggle, then and now, to translate a vision of holiness and perfection into something that can exist in an imperfect world. Shabbat Shalom.